What's up everybody, this is Master Ian Gamer with a first look at Overwatch 2's brand new Season 4 support hero, Lifeweaver. In today's video, I'm going to be showing off every single ability in his kit and giving my initial thoughts on how he actually plays as a hero in Overwatch. So to start, let's just run through his kit real quickly, taking a look at his abilities, starting off first and foremost with his Healing Blossom. This is his primary fire. He is a support hero, so it makes sense that he has a healing ability as his primary weapon, or at least as a main function of his kit. And we can see it has a simple charge up mechanic in the middle there, where if you charge it all the way up, it heals for as much as 65 healing per blossom delivered. And of course, you can sort of spam it really short like that to provide smaller bursts of healing, but of course, you know, it's going to use more ammo and you have to reload between them, so there's a bit of a balance there in terms of finding how much you want to heal. It is also worth noting that it is a bit of a homing ability, so it works pretty similar to Briggs' Repair Pack in this regard, where you don't have to hit them directly like you would if you were shooting with Ana's rifle, but instead you can just sort of have it vaguely close to the person you're trying to heal, and then when you release it, it'll target to the person, or in this case the training bots, and that's who will end up healing. Now, getting onto Lifeweaver's other main ability, he has a weapon swap mechanic, just like Mercy and Torbjorn, where he can swap weapons using the scroll mouse wheel if you're playing on PC, or console, I suppose it's a different button, but he has to swap between the Healing Blossom and his Thorn Volley, which is his damage-dealing primary fire. So as we can see here, it shoots out a volley of shards, very similar to the Needler from Halo, for those of you who are familiar, and it's basically just a spread shot of different little projectiles. It does a moderate amount of damage, it can headshot, not too damage dealing, but again, he's a support, so he's not supposed to be doing a ton of damage, but he can just sort of spray that out to deal a bit of damage and certainly take out a few enemies. One other quick thing to note is that the needles do not have any damage fall off, so they'll still be dealing full damage even when fired at max range, but because of the spread, it will be harder to actually hit the target at range, and thus it's not going to be dealing quite as much damage, at least not that consistently. Now, Lifeweaver's first activated ability is Rejuvenating Dash. This is just a short little dash, very similar to Hanzo's lunge, that just moves him quickly in the direction he's facing. So as you see, if I'm moving forward, I dash forward like that. But then you can also dash sideways and backwards as well. Very similar to other directional abilities, kind of like a Tracer Blink in that regard, where you can just sort of use it in whatever direction you're traveling. Now, beyond simply moving Lifeweaver with this dash ability, it also heals him. As we can see, it quickly heals 25 HP before then his support passive kicks in and he just starts healing on his own normally. Some other things to note, the ability moves you approximately 6 meters forward, or in whichever direction you're moving, and has a cooldown of 5 seconds. Moving on to his next activated ability, he has Petal Platform, and this is where his kit starts to get really interesting. So by using the right click or alternate fire button, he can throw out a little flower-shaped platform, which will sit there on the ground, until either an ally or enemy steps on it, at which point it'll ascend and allow you to reach high ground positions. Now, given that this is an ability which he throws out, it's pretty easy to just sort of put it wherever you need be. Let's say, for example, I want to raise up this bot, I just toss that down there, and since he's already standing on it when the platform spawns, it'll just ascend straight up to the top immediately, and then it'll hover there until its timer runs out, which we can see going right there. And after it ascends, even if nobody is standing on the platform, it will remain airborne until its timer runs out, which does seem to last about 10 seconds. And it's also worth noting that the platform itself does have a health bar, as you can see in the bottom left. It has 400 HP. Allies cannot damage it, but enemies can certainly shoot at it to destroy it, potentially jeopardizing whatever sort of strategy you maybe had in play to elevate you or your team, or maybe if you're using the platform to trap enemies, then they can break it to sort of get free. And another thing to note, which we'll see right here, is that despite 10 seconds having passed, the platform is still present. It only seems to despawn after it's been elevated, so once it's sitting there dormant on the ground, it'll never go away unless it's destroyed, but then it will eventually start to tick down and time out after it's gone up. And as I mentioned before, it does work on enemies as well, in the same ways it works on allies, just raises them up, and then once they're, well, assuming they're not whisked away by a moving platform, they will remain on there until they jump down or destroy it or it times out or whatever. And additionally, you can actually destroy the platform yourself just by hitting the interact button, which will just cause it to break, regardless of whether it's on the ground or elevated, or whether someone's standing on it. So you can just sort of throw it down, jump onto it, raise up, and then maybe if you don't want an enemy to be standing on it, or you just want it to be gone for whatever reason, you can just instantly break it by hitting that interact button. And of course, this also applies even if it's holding a friend or foe. One really cool and really fun trick you can actually do with Petal Platform is if you jump right when the platform reaches its top position, you'll actually get a sort of super jump that bounces you even higher into the air. It's a bit tricky to get the hang of, but it's very fun to pull off, and certainly is just going to add to his mobility, particularly vertical mobility, by being able to reach even higher locations than where the platform itself is actually able to go. And one final little note is that the ability itself does have a cooldown of 12 seconds, which is independent of whether or not the platform has been elevated or destroyed or no matter what. Cooldown starts as soon as you throw out the ability, and then it can just be used again after 12 seconds. And the next ability in Lifeweaver's kit, and easily the most controversial, is Life Grasp. This allows you to grab an ally and pull them towards you. Yes, it is very similar to Roadhog's chain hook, except that it grabs allies instead of enemies. Certainly you can see the trolling potential there, and I'll talk about that in just a minute once I sort of move on to my personal thoughts, but it's certainly a powerful ability just in terms of how it can reposition allies and just pull them out of harm's way or pull them back to you to maybe help defend you if it's like a tank hero you're pulling in. Plenty of utility and potential use cases can be seen for this ability in particular, outside of trolling, of course. You can see that it does have a fairly long range on it as well. It's not tremendously far, but you can pull people from a pretty good distance. And also you'll notice when the ability is used, a little bubble will form around the hero that you're pulling in towards you. That bubble works fairly similar to a Zarya bubble in that it protects that player from taking damage, from crowd control effects and things like that, and thus is a sort of temporary stasis-like thing that protects the character to some extent while they're being pulled towards you. So not only is it useful for repositioning allies and bringing them into more opportune or helpful or safe locations, but also it lets you protect them a little bit, much like, again, a Zarya bubble does. Also, Life Grip has a cooldown of 20 seconds. Now, before I move on to his ultimate, I do need to talk about Lifeweaver's personal passive ability, which is Parting Gift. This is a very strange ability, and you'll see kind of how it works here, which is that when Lifeweaver himself dies, he drops a little health pack, essentially, that can be picked up by either your teammates or the enemy. So as I'm getting, beaten down here by the bot, I'll just show you this friendly bot there had less health. Oh, and then they get healed right then and there from having received that parting gift. It's certainly an interesting mechanic, just having him be able to drop something that can be picked up by either allies or enemies. As you can see there, if I grab it, it heals 75 HP if grabbed by an enemy, as opposed to 250 HP if grabbed by an ally. So there is a bit of a, difference there, so that enemies aren't going to be benefiting too much from it. But, it is interesting, I think, that Blizzard added an ability that can essentially heal an enemy player in that sort of way. And finally, now getting onto Lifeweaver's ultimate ability, he has Tree of Life, which is a sort of targeted construct he can build, which when it goes up, it shoots out a massive initial burst of healing, and then produces healing pulses like this, which heals nearby allies. It's also worth noting that the tree itself is a physical object, so it does block movement. You cannot walk through it in this sort of manner, and much like the Petal Platform, it does have a health bar as well, which you can see again in the bottom left, which is 1,000 health for its full health, and then, enemies can shoot at it, destroy it, or they just have to wait for it to time out. Pretty similar to Symmetra's ultimate barrier in that regard, where it's probably going to be too much health to reasonably be taken out just by shooting at it, but still it is technically possible. Unfortunately, though, it doesn't really make for a platform itself. You can kind of land on it, but you really can't stand on top of the tree in the same way as the platform, despite it being a physical structure, which is, kind of disappointing, but yeah, it just is what it is. And one other little interesting detail about the Tree of Life is that if you put it in a low overhead area, like let's say we put it in this doorway right here, when it grows, it'll only grow partially. It won't have the canopy up top, it'll basically just be the trunk and bottom branches of the tree, and you can actually use it to straight up block doorways, which is an interesting bit of utility there. I'm curious to see if there's any sort of like practical uses we see for just blocking passages and choke points with the tree itself. Again, the tree can be destroyed, so maybe that'll make it not terribly useful in that regard, but it's an interesting potential use of his ultimate. Alright, so now that I've covered all his abilities and shown them off in detail and how they interact and work and everything, I want to talk a bit about my personal thoughts on Lifeweaver as a hero, which is that, honestly, I'm a bit mixed on him. Starting off with just his primary weapon tools, which is the Healing Blossom and the Thorn Volley, I don't really know how I feel about it being a weapon swap in the same way as Mercy and Torbjorn, as opposed to just a primary fire, alternate fire, like what we see with a lot of other support heroes like Baptiste and Kiriko. I think having to swap between the damage and the healing ends up feeling a bit clunky in practice when you're trying to just, shoot out some damage to damage the enemy and then quickly swap to healing to heal a teammate. Having to just manually swap back and forth like that between the two modes really sort of delays your ability to deal damage or heal, whichever you're swapping to, which doesn't really feel great. And I think this issue is unfortunately sort of compounded by the way Healing Blossom just sort of works, where it's basically a charge up shot that you have to sort of hold and then release before you can deal some decent healing with it, which just makes all his sort of healing actions feel very delayed, where you're shooting out with the Thorn Volley, oh, you need to heal a teammate, you have to not only swap to the Healing Blossom, but then charge it up, and by that point, I feel like in a lot of situations, your teammate's already going to be dead. Not to mention that, outside of his ultimate, Healing Blossom is the only way for Lifeweaver to actually heal his teammates. I mean, I guess you could just let yourself die so they can pick up your little parting gift, but that's almost certainly never going to be a viable option in basically any scenario that I can conceive of. So he really is limited to having very few healing options, with only really the Healing Blossom as his main effective, consistent form of healing. Now, there certainly has been a lot of discussion in the community over the years around the idea of making a more utility-focused support hero, which is absolutely what Lifeweaver is, but something about the way they've sort of made him, specifically with that Healing Blossom and just the clunkiness of swapping between that and the Thorns, and then the slow actual healing process of having to charge it up, it doesn't feel great in practice. And I don't know if this is something that I just have to get used to by playing the hero more often and in more situations. Maybe it'll end up feeling fine after I've spent a month or two playing the hero, but initially, at the very least, I have to admit I don't really like it that much. It just feels weird and kind of like an inferior version of, again, how heroes like Baptiste and Kiriko work by having both a damage and healing as part of their primary and alternate fire. Now, one other quick thing I'd like to mention, though, regarding the swapping of the two weapons, is that by having the weapon swap in this manner, they have independent ammo pools that can actually be reloaded while you've swapped to the other weapon. Let's say you deal some damage by shooting out Thorns, you're getting low, you're going to have to reload. Rather than standing there reloading and not being able to do anything, you can just swap to the Healing Blossom, dish out some healing, and then by the time you swap back to the Thorns, they'll have automatically reloaded, since that's how it works in Overwatch for the heroes who have swapped weapons like that. And then once you shoot out some more Thorns, you can go back to the Healing Blossom, which itself will have then reloaded because it's, again, swapping on and off. This actually feels like an interesting sort of workaround to a specific issue that Kiriko has, where when you're in a big team fight and you're throwing out a bunch of kunai and then you're swapping over to healing a whole bunch, you never really get an opportunity to actually reload your kunai because you're trying to just constantly throw out the Afuda to get the healing out. So by having this swap mechanic, it is an interesting sort of difference to how Kiriko works, which, again, I think does have some potential benefits with the auto reload mechanic being worked into it, but still just kind of mechanically feels clunky to me. I don't know, this is definitely an aspect of the character which I'm very eager to see what other people think. Now let's move on to what is probably going to be his most controversial ability, Life Grasp. Now, as I already mentioned, absolutely there is trolling potential with this ability, and just talking with the other creators and seeing what they all have had to say on the test server and whatnot with all this, yeah, there's a lot of concern about using this ability to pull people off the map and just troll them. And yeah, I mean, just testing it in the practice range, it is absolutely possible to just pull your allies straight off the map and kill them. I will admit they've designed the ability in such a way that it's not super easy to achieve this. The game seems to try very hard to prioritize putting a pulled target onto a piece of land, basically, that the character can actually stand on, so they won't just automatically be pulled into a pit. But certainly there are plenty of locations where you can get right at the edge and sort of gimmick it a bit, or use your own body to sort of push the hero as soon as they physically reach that spot, so that they'll just end up falling off and dying. So yeah, there is absolutely trolling potential here when it comes to this hero, and it's a genuine concern, but personally, I'm not that worried about it. I mean, we'll see. Maybe it does become a problem and Blizzard has to change things, but for me, it's at least offset by the fact that I think this ability in and of itself is very intriguing just in terms of the beneficial applications of this mechanic. You know, maybe your Reinhardt overextends and you pull him back to keep him safe, or a Tracer gets, you know, stunned by something and is probably gonna die, but oh, you grab her, pull her back to safety. Heck, even using it to just pull someone up to high ground with you, which maybe isn't super significant for his kit, given that he has the Petal Platform, but I'll get to that more in just a moment. But nonetheless, I think there is a ton of interesting potential for this Life Grasp ability, and it's definitely something I'm eager to play around with more and see what people can come up with for its uses. Moving on to the Petal Platform, though, this ability I think is easily my favorite ability in his entire kit. The implementation of it is phenomenal. People for years have speculated about the idea of a support hero that can create jump pads for their allies to be able to reach high ground and stuff. This is basically that, but done in a far better, far more interesting, and far more interactive method than having just a jump pad. Being able to create a platform that not only you and your allies can use to ascend, but also the enemy can, is just a really interesting way of going about it. The way the platform can be destroyed by taking damage, I think, is a good element to have as part of it. The way it times out automatically after a set period of time, again, plays into it not just being too obnoxious to just have these platforms scattered all over the place, just sitting there not doing anything. And overall, it's just a really fun and fluid ability for him to have that also has a ton of potential utility, just elevating your team. It's like a Mei Ice Wall, except more fluid in how it can be used to actually reach high ground. Definitely this is an ability I'm super eager to play around with more, because I think there's going to be a ton of phenomenal uses for it. But moving from my favorite ability in this kit, now let's talk about my least favorite ability, Rejuvenating Dash. As far as I can tell, this ability is borderline useless. The healing it gives you is almost negligible. 25 HP is pretty much nothing in terms of healing applied through an activated ability like this, and the distance you actually move with the dash itself is, again, not much. It's effectively like a worse Hanzo lunge or Tracer blink in that, sure, you get a bit of mobility with it and can sort of move and maybe dodge incoming fire from something or another, quickly dash behind cover, but more or less, it just kind of feels like a waste of an ability slot. I just wish it was more interesting or had more clear cut of a purpose. Or honestly, kind of wish it maybe just didn't exist at all, because as is, Lifeweaver's kit does feel a bit bloated. He's got a lot going on here, more than it feels like he really needs to have as a hero. Overall, I think an issue I kind of have with him is just the complexity of it. I know the devs have said they wanted him to be a complex hero, so that there's more to sort of master with him, but I kind of feel like there's an unnecessary number of tools in his kit, so to say. I assume the sort of intended purpose for Rejuvenating Dash is to sort of assist in Lifeweaver's Petal Platform ability, where he can sort of elevate himself with the platform and then use the dash to get to like a more stable, permanent high ground in case the platform isn't like right adjacent to the elevated position he's trying to reach. But even then, I just feel like maybe there could have been a better way for them to integrate it into his kit without having to make it an activated ability like this. If I'm being totally honest, I wouldn't even mind if they just literally gave him Hanzo's lunge as an ability. Just the second tapping of the jump button to lunge in whatever direction, I think would have just really simplified it without needing to give it a dedicated ability slot, as is actually the case. And last, of course, then is his ultimate ability, which is probably my second favorite part of his kit. I think it's just a really cool idea for an ultimate to have a giant construct that just heals all the people around it. The fact it can be destroyed gives some counterplay in that regard, and I love seeing all the different interactions with how it can physically block movement of players, while also having, different designs basically, depending on how much headroom the tree itself has. I think that's a really cool design choice right there. And overall, yeah, it seems like a solid ultimate. It's in a lot of ways like a stationary, separate Zenyatta ultimate, where Lifeweaver himself doesn't have to commit to being this massive AoE healing source, but rather can just set the tree and then go ahead and continue doing his own things. So yeah, I think Tree of Life is a really cool ultimate, and definitely going to be one that's nice to have in the support roster. And on that note, that does it for my initial gameplay and thoughts on the new support hero Lifeweaver. Overall, I am definitely eager to play him more in actual matches with people once the season goes live, and overall, I'm, again, a bit mixed on many of his abilities, but I'm definitely eager to just play him more and see how everything ends up feeling in the long run. So on that note, thank you all so much for watching. Be sure to let me know your thoughts on the new support hero Lifeweaver by dropping a comment down below. Is he a hero you're excited to get to try out for yourself, or maybe he's not quite the character you were hoping he'd be? Either way, be sure to leave a like if you enjoyed this video and subscribe, follow me on Twitter, hit up that bell icon, and come join my Discord server to hang out and never miss any of my future Overwatch content. Special thanks to my YouTube channel members who help make these videos possible, and if you'd like to join them to earn some cool rewards, then just hit that join button down below. Otherwise, this is Master Ian Gamer signing off, and until next time, have a great day.